Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Wader. We're back talking NBA playoff action. And we had some fun series. Of course, the conference final or the conference semis just wrapped up last night in a pretty kind of underwhelming game seven and an underwhelming day for the NBA in general. And so now we're left with four teams as we enter our conference finals. But first, let's break down the last round, this conference semifinals, and kind of talk about what we saw. And let's start with the two kind of not super close series, our two sweeps here. And first, let's kick it off with the series that ended first, really only because of scheduling. But that's the Knicks and the 76ers. And look, we talked about it. The Knicks kind of stumbled a little bit in that first round series against the Atlanta Hawks. But look, they were firing on all cylinders as that series got later on. And that momentum carried into this second round series against the 76ers. And kind of to hint at the point that we discussed last episode when we talked about would you rather have that rest or would you rather come in with the momentum? I think our two teams that had that big rest, bigger rest, especially the other team we'll talk about here in a moment, they both come out with sweeps compared to their counterparts who had to play longer series and maybe even with finding that momentum and getting teams back. But yeah, this was not a close series. Really, I'll say this, no fault of the 76ers own. They just got outplayed. They had Joel Embiid. They had everybody, and they had everybody playing well coming into this series. But for the Knicks, Jalen Brunson was phenomenal. Watching game four just wasn't even close. I mean, the whole fourth quarter, just having the backups in had to be deflating, especially no OG Anunoby in that game. But just curious your thoughts on a series that was utter domination from the New York Knicks from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This shocked me. I really thought this would be a way more competitive series, given all sorts of factors here. But especially when you take a look at the games closer, I think one game was decent, and that was game two. But game one, the Knicks made 19 threes. They routed them. Game two, Embiid doesn't play, and yet it's the Sixers' best performance because they got help from Paul George, Maxey, Oubre, Edgecombe, and all them. But the Knicks came back, found a way to win, and then game three was close for parts of it, but after that second quarter, I mean, it was just all Knicks. And really, games three and four were the shocker because, yeah, like I said, OG Anunoby didn't play in games three or four, and they really were no contest. I mean, shoot, that first quarter in game four, it almost looked like the Sixers had given up. I mean, it really did look like they had given up with I forget how bad that started. Wasn't it like 20 to 6 or something like that? It,
Yeah,
it, it got to a pretty bad point for them. So look, we'll obviously dive into the Sixers in a second. But as far as the Knicks goes, like I said, yeah, the great thing about him, Jalen Brunson was great. Everyone came ready to play. Here's the thing, though, about the Knicks. We know the offense will be there. So far, their defense in the playoffs has been the biggest surprise to me. On the defensive end, you don't see him winning the score and all that, but when you look on the defensive end, it's so much better than what they were in the regular season. And to win in the playoffs, you got to play on the defensive end. And when you combine a better defensive performance with the scoring output that they have on a consistent basis, there's a reason they're 4 wins away from an NBA Finals.
yeah, and it goes to show us some of the additions this team has made. Obviously, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, these were kind of guys that were already known as like these two-way threats, and bringing them both in over the last couple of years has been helpful. Mitchell Robinson, kind of, the guy that we flop in here as the defensive center when they need to get stopped. You need offense, you've got Karl Anthony Towns. You need defense, you've got Mitchell Robinson. The one that I've been really impressed with, and obviously another guy we knew his defense, but that's of course I'm blanking on it. Jose Alvarado. I almost said Fernando Alvarado, which I knew wasn't right, but it was not coming to me. Jose Alvarado. He was a trade deadline acquisition for this team. And look, while his offensive numbers haven't always been the big scoring outburst he had against the Sixers in the regular season, what was that, like his third game with the
I think
team?
so, yeah.
But he is known for that defense. He's very sneaky. He's like an off-ball pest, but also very in your hands. A lot of takeaways, and to be able to have him to come in off the bench and kind of flop in, and obviously for a guy like Landry Shamet, it ended up hurting his minutes in the rotation. Earlier in the year, he was a great scorer, great bench piece for them, and then he got hurt. Alvarado comes in and has kind of taken his minutes away a little bit. But when you've got so many Jordan Clarksons and McBrides on the bench, so many guards that are good scorers on the perimeter, can take it to the rim, just real good all around scorers, not to mention having a guy like Jalen Brunson as your starting point guard. It really helps to be able to have a guy to flop into the rotation like Jose Alvarado. And so I think we're finally kind of seeing all of those guys kind of click on defense. Josh Hart's always been kind of a
Mhm.
gritty player. I won't necessarily say a great defender, but he's very gritty, good hustle guy. And that's going to translate
Yeah.
when he
You
brings
know
it
what
to
you're
the
getting
rotation.
from him night in and night out. You know what you're
Exactly.
getting.
And so I think this defense that we're kind of seeing is a culmination of these guys kind of finally putting it all together, playing like a unit, having a lot of success. But I'll agree with you. It is definitely impressive. But as we look at the 76ers and what's left for them this season, or coming into next season, look, you've tied yourself to a big Paul George contract, tied yourself to a big Joel Embiid contract. Kelly Oubre's on a decently sized deal. Tyrese Maxey on a pretty good sized deal. And VJ Edgecombe on a, number 3 picks deal or whatever, wherever he was picked
Yeah.
in the lottery. So he's making a good amount of money. There's not a lot you can do star power wise in free agency to make this thing work. But they're sticking with Nick Nurse, which is something I love to see. I think Nick Nurse got the culture in professional sports with the hiring and firing of coaches. Yeah, I guess it really doesn't extend to baseball as much. There aren't as many overreactions, but you see it in the NFL all the time. You're starting to see it in the NBA a lot. The Raptors miss one postseason with Nick Nurse and call it done.
Hmm.
Talking about the guy who won a title in his first season, and they've been, a great franchise, a really consistent franchise since then. Um, so for them to go ahead and say, yeah, it's not your fault, because it isn't. It isn't Nick Nurse's fault the way the ball, because when he's got everybody healthy, look what they do. They take down Boston in 7. So clearly something works here, but you're keeping Nick Nurse. Obviously, it seems like Maxey and Edgecombe are the future. Do you think there's a world where one of either Paul George or Joel Embiid, or even both, could be shipped off this summer? And if so, do you think that there's anything star power wise for them to get, or are they going to have to look more for draft assets and maybe look for a soft rebuild under Nick Nurse?
Well, first off, I just want to say, shout out Nick Nurse, thoughts and prayers, for what he had to go through during the playoffs is just absolutely
Agreed.
horrible. And the fact that, he was even able to be there for the games, given that that was going on, all respect to him. But as far as the Sixers go, yeah, they're in a tough situation because you look at the East, and this is something I'll dive into more in the West whenever we get some of those teams there. Here's factor this. When healthy and everyone's back and Boston goes back to 100%, is this Sixers team this year running it back next year beating them? Probably not. Are they beating
Agreed.
the Indiana Pacers next year with Halliburton 100% and who knows what else they do in the offseason? Probably not. Are you beating the Knicks? Well, we clearly saw you're not beating them. So look, to me personally, I've said it for years. You've heard me say it for years about my opinions on Joel Embiid, this and that. Fact of the matter is, you have a duo at the guard position in Maxey and Edgecombe that can be the force and the leaders of this team for the future. Embiid is 32 years old. Let's say like it is. It may not feel like it because he's only played in like 6 seasons of the NBA, actually, but he's 32 years old. And fact of the matter is this, he's on a 3-year max extension that's starting next year, where he's getting nearly $60 million over the next 3 years. like on a consistent basis. And that's him turning, yeah, here it is. So next year it'll be 57.9 million at the age of 32. At 33, it's 62.6 million. At 34, it's 67.2 million with a player option. And no disrespect to Joel Embiid, well, a little because I'm not his biggest fan, but that's beside the point. Fact of the matter is, if he was struggling with staying healthy when he was younger, how do you think it's going to be when he gets 32, 33, 34 as he gets older in this contract? Look, if it's me and I'm the Sixers, I see where the East is heading right now with some heavyweights over the next couple of years. I am trading Embiid. I'm getting rid of some veteran pieces, and I am rebuilding this team around Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe because they made the mistake of trading Jared McCain. Still have no idea why they traded him in the first place. That's beside the point. Trade him to the Thunder. So now you have a little less depth there, but Edgecombe and Maxey showed a lot in this playoffs of what they could be as the lead stars on the team. And I think you can show that by saying, let's scrap this and let's rebuild around him. Remember, Daryl Morey's been fired from the Sixers. You know, James Harden somewhere celebrating in Cleveland whenever he heard this news. But so there's just a lot of question marks there. And I think with the two guards they have, I say you get as much as you can for Embiid, George, and some of those guys and build around those two for the future.
I'll say this much. Look, VJ Edgecombe showed he's ready. He was awesome this postseason. This is a guy that doesn't need more development time. So I agree with you. It's time to lean into these guys. If you're the 76ers, I think you've got to rebuild just purely based on the situation you're in. Like you said, running it back with this team and maybe a couple different bench, veteran options, it's not going to cut it and what this Eastern Conference is going to look like, just next season.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Magic will be better next year with or without Giannis.
The Pistons, don't forget about them for what they are for the future.
The Pistons, probably not beating the Cavs, who are going to have a little bit of money to spend maybe this offseason. The Hawks accidentally were good this year. They get to lean into that a little bit more coming into next season. I think there are a lot of teams that coming into next year could really be a challenge for the 76ers. My big thing is whatever you do, you've got to be pretty committed to it. I think no matter what, Paul George has to go this offseason.
Yeah.
Paul George wasn't bad in the time that he played, but he got a big suspension. Slap on the wrist there. I know that kind of stinks, but he was suspended, and it was something he did on his own to get suspended. And he was supposed to be the third option. They didn't really know if Edgecombe was going to be ready right away, and he is. There's not really room for Paul George to be making that much money and be on the team as the fourth option.
Yeah, exactly.
There just isn't. So Paul George has got to go no matter what. I get maybe sticking to Joel Embiid. He's been injury prone, but it's just so hard as an organization when you have him come back for the playoffs and you beat the Celtics in 7 games.
Right, exactly.
And he's largely a huge part of that success in that first round series. And it's like we could just figure it out. Also, I don't know if there's any figuring it out. Like you said, he had health issues when he was young. It hasn't gotten any better. It's probably never going to get any better. But if you're the Sixers, this is the time to sell on Embiid. If you sell on Embiid, it's now. You get to say, hey, look at what he did in a 7-game series against the Celtics. When we actually got him, he is still a difference maker in this league. And that might be enough to justify that $60 million price tag and maybe a young star or a couple draft picks headed your way. That might be enough to sway a team who thinks they're one guy away. But we come into next year and this team underperforms again, you don't have that same momentum.
Exactly.
You don't get to have that. This is the time right now. I'm not saying you have to trade him. Personally, I would start looking in that direction. But I'm not saying you have to part ways with Joel Embiid. If you believe that something can be done in Philadelphia with Embiid, with Maxey, with Edgecombe, then I'll stand by it. But this is your last chance to get rid of Embiid and it mean something for the organization. It can be an upgrade for the
Right.
organization.
To get something back, to get like some
Yes.
sort of capital back. Because like I said, he's gonna make $60 million at the age of 33. Let's say they disappoint next year. It's like who's gonna want to pay for a 33-year-old injury prone center making $60 million a year? There's not a lot of people that are gonna want to go for that. I mean, just plain
Yeah.
simple.
And so, yeah, this is the last opportunity, I think. Otherwise, I think for the Sixers, you let Joel Embiid ride out his career as a 76er. We don't get to see players do it very often. But look, this is the last offseason you can get that much back, that much meaningful return on Embiid. If you don't do it now, I don't think you ever should. This is a guy, again, we don't get to see this very often, guys staying with one organization. And to be as meaningful and kind of behind that turnaround that we saw in the early 2010s, carrying into now, I think it would be just, but it's all about what happens this offseason.
Hey,
But
can we just add one more thing in here with Daryl
yes,
Morey being gone? Bring back Sam Hinkie. Let's make it
yes,
happen, ladies and gentlemen.
bring
Bring
him back.
Sam Hinkie back to the 76ers.
Also, what do I have to do to get Brett Brown coaching in the NBA again? He was
Yes.
behind the Sixers turnaround. I love Brett Brown. He's from the Popovich coaching tree.
Yeah.
Brett Brown, where are you?
I was about to
I
say, is he an assistant? I don't even know where he is right now.
I don't know. Are you Googling it? Because I'm about to
I'm
again.
about to look it up. Yeah, I'm looking it up right now because I'm genuinely curious. Like when you said his name, I was like, now where the heck has he been?
I miss Brett Brown.
He is an assistant for the Spurs currently. He's been in the same spot where he's been since he got fired by the Sixers. He's been
That
assistant
makes
for the Spurs.
He's a Popovich guy. It makes sense that he'd go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss Brett Brown. Obviously, I love Nick Nurse in Philadelphia. Brett Brown to the Bulls. I'm not complaining.
Hey.
It wouldn't be at the necessarily top of my list, but he'd be top five in
Yeah.
my book. Just to have fun with it. Anything's better than Billy Donovan.
That's
Uh,
fair.
sorry, Billy, just didn't work. All right, let's get to that Thunder Lakers series. Another sweep where we saw the Thunder look just as dominant. Still a scary team. There is no championship hangover. We saw that in the regular season. It's continuing in the playoffs. 8 games, 8 victories. OKC continues to roll. I don't think Lakers at full strength would have had a chance in this one.
Yeah. Let's also factor in Jalen Williams still has yet to play since like game 1 or 2 of the Sun series. He has not had to play in this series at all because they frankly didn't need him. Now, let's address it like it is. Games 1 and 2 specifically, the officiating in those games, it was hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. Games 1 and 2, I sat there and was like, this is just horrible. Game 3, Thunder just kicked their butt. Game 3 was just a Thunder beatdown. It wouldn't even mattered if the foul calls were in their favor. They would have probably beat them by more than what they did. And then game 4 was the best game of the series. Great back and forth. Lakers had their chances and just couldn't get it done. But yeah, those first 2 games, they were kind of hard to watch, and it was a rough look for what was going on in the playoffs. But overall, for the Thunder, like I said, big thing. Still have yet to lose. 4-0, 4-0 sweeps. The defense continues to be there. Although, here's the thing, Shea may not have been there, but how about the person that has become one of the best stories of not just the Thunder, but of the playoffs in general, Austin? And of course, I think you know exactly who I'm referring to. AJ Mitchell, I think, has become one of the most heralded players, unknowns, that has become such a big contributor out of nowhere for the Thunder. And he's been scoring 20 plus points a night. So while Shea may be struggling on the offensive end, AJ Mitchell's picking up the pace and picking up the pieces for him while Shea still brings that defense and everything. And don't forget, if I remember correctly, they signed AJ Mitchell to like a super cheap 3 or 4 year deal last summer. I want to say, I don't remember for sure. It was like whenever they did their whole contract extensions for winning the title. They gave him like a really cheap deal. How cheap we talking?
3 years,
Oh
$8.7 million.
gosh. That is already an hella underpayment for him. I'm just gonna be frank. But and about them, I give the Thunder credit. It's a talented team, but man, I can't wait to talk about this next series for them because this next series, the potential is there for them. Honestly, we'll dive into the Lakers in a second, but credit to the Thunder and credit to guys like AJ Mitchell stepping up when they need them to.
Yeah, I think the Thunder will see their first real test in the series we're going to talk about in just a minute. But yeah, they've just been dominant. Right now, it's been on schedule. Truly, any loss in the first two rounds, and you might think, have the Thunder lost a step between last year and this year?
Mhm.
They haven't faced anybody that offers them a real challenge. That's going to change, but they haven't. So the ball keeps on rolling. We won't drag too long and kind of a dead series. But
Yeah.
for the Lakers this offseason, look, you got a lot of decisions to make, and
Mhm.
obviously some of those decisions are going to be out of your hand. But it starts with LeBron James and kind of what he does this offseason. I think obviously that steers you in a direction. But he's had a great career. He's really, real. I say great career, like, he's bummed. He's LeBron James. Of course, he's had a great career. Uh, but it really seems like this could be it for LeBron James. In the press conference, he was a little too real.
Mhm.
It was the first time I've been thinking all season, there's no way. But that felt like more of a retirement than not, that last press conference. Uh, Thoughts on what you think the future for LeBron is?
Yeah, so I was with you. After that game ended, I was like, everyone was like, what's next? I was like, he's not retiring. There's no way he retires. Then I saw the press conference video and I was like, okay, wow, he might actually be done. I think it's just one of those things we just assume he's gonna play forever until he just doesn't.
Yeah,
Because the last 2 or 3 years, everyone's felt like people be like, this could be it for him. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's gonna be back next year. Just like never even crossed my mind he wouldn't be back next year. But after watching that press conference, I mean, the reality's there for it. But this is where the Lakers, it works out for them because of Nico Harrison giving them a gift. One of the biggest gifts in the history of the sport is a new franchise player to build around, which is obviously Luka Doncic, 27 years old, still got a ton of years with him. Building around him will be the thing. The second LeBron retires, the goal in that roster will change from something along the lines of playing with LeBron to now we got to build like Luka. And I'll go ahead and say it for JJ Redick, for Rob Pelinka. Go look at how the Mavs did it in building around Luka and getting defense surrounding him because that's the caveat. And let's just say it like it is. Luka is a terrible defender at points. At his best, he's even just not even average, I would say. And that's but you take that when he's giving you the scoring output that he's giving you on a nightly basis. You take that, but you got to have the defense to build around him. And there are some good pieces there. Rui Hachimura, I think, is a must to keep around if you're a Laker. I want to know why he wasn't in the game at the end of game 4 when they needed a 3-pointer when he was going off the whole game. That's beside the point there. But I mean, really, besides him and maybe I don't know what you do with Austin Reeves because I don't know how he fits with as a whole, with no LeBron there. So it's hard to say what the Lakers truly do until we know for sure what LeBron's future is. Because if LeBron's coming back, I imagine they'll try to run it back and say, look, we're gonna have 100% Luca, and then we're gonna go from there. But if he does decide to retire, then it shifts things like crazy for the Lakers' future.
I think I agree with you. I think you're on obviously with if LeBron's going to come back, and then obviously you have to bring him back contract wise.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, if he doesn't retire, I think he's a free agent or at least a
I
player
believe
option.
so.
Then you have to convince him to come back. But you get LeBron back, yeah, I think your answer is pretty simple. fill in some holes with minimum contracts and go from there. Try and bring Austin Reeves back. Seems like, they've got a good trio there. But yeah, I agree with you. If LeBron retires, it kind of changes the spectrum. I'm kind of with you. It's not that Austin Reeves isn't a good player. He's going to go out and get a good contract and he's going to be a star somewhere else. I agree with you, though. I don't really think you have room for him and Luca, and neither of them plays that great a defense.
Exactly.
Um, if LeBron retires, maybe besides a few guys like you said, Rui Hachimura, maybe keep Dalton Connect around just because he's young. You might look to kind of ship a lot of guys out, get
Hmm.
some assets, and kind of rebuild yourself up a little bit to get ready for fully going in behind Luka Doncic. Uh, but it's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty right now for the Los Angeles Lakers organization until LeBron does make that decision. Let's go to our other Western Conference series where we had a real back and forth fight, 6 games, but ultimately the San Antonio Spurs come out on top. And some of the discourse at certain points in the series was kind of unbearable.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, maybe you didn't see it, but I did. It was after the game Wemby gets ejected.
Hmm.
Uh, People were like, "Oh, well, without Wemby, the Spurs are nothing." Well, yeah, without LeBron James, the 2013 Miami Heat were nothing. Without Michael Jordan, the Bulls in the 90s were garbage. I mean, yes, obviously, that's how being the best player on your team and a top 4 player in the world, top 3, top 2 player in the entire world works. Your team kind of stinks when you're not out there. Um, it's like people, I don't know, sometimes people think they're Socrates with this analysis. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, dude, that doesn't make the Spurs frauds. That's just how being a good basketball player works. If the Thunder didn't have Shea, they probably wouldn't play as good as they do when they have Shea. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I feel like you're just stating the obvious.
Right.
Um, the Timberwolves, man, I was impressed. They came out and they played hard. Both of these teams went back and forth. Uh, but what I was really impressed with was San Antonio. They were very grown up. They were very mature. The reason I picked the Timberwolves in this series is I thought, hey, this is nothing new for them. They've been making these runs to the NBA Finals. Might be a little bit too early for the Spurs and for Wemby. And look, there were points where Wemby struggled, or he got the silly flagrant two and got ejected from the game. There were times where he showed kind of some of that young inexperience. But he made up for it with the way he closed out this series. Um, he was just absolutely unbelievable. Uh, hard fought by the Timberwolves. It's almost just like they're right, like kind of like what Anthony Edwards said. They asked if he thought they needed another star, and he's like, "I think we're good." I agree. I think Minnesota is good. The Western Conference is just really, really good.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think anything needs to change in Minnesota, but for San Antonio, awesome, impressive performance. And now they get to clash with the team in the regular season. They got the best of several times. So we were in for almost no doubt 7 game series in our Western Conference Finals. But your thoughts on the Spurs?
Well, let me just say the only thing that Minnesota needs to change is they need to switch to the Eastern Conference. That's the only thing that needs to change. If we just put them in the Eastern Conference, give me an Eastern Conference Finals of Timberwolves versus Pacers. Like, yes, like that would
Yes.
be great television to watch. But fact of the matter for me in this series, it really felt like even after game one, I felt really confident the Spurs win the series because look, Minnesota won game one. Wemby had a horrible shooting night. It happens to the best players in the world. You have an off shooting night. It happens. And then games two and three happened where we saw Wemby at his best and they took control. And like I said, Wemby gets ejected. And, I'm not going to lie, rightfully so. It was a flagrant two
Agreed.
foul. And
That's a flagrant. He
yeah,
stopped, and then he lifted the elbow, and he
I
goes
mean,
as hard as he can. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah. The good thing for him was thankfully he's Victor Wembanyama. Otherwise, he's not playing in game five. Let's say it
Yeah.
like it is. If it's
Yes.
someone, if it was Julian Champagne doing that for the Spurs, oh, he ain't playing game five. No,
No.
absolutely not. Um, but even when they lost that game for Minnesota, I felt great because I was like, you mean to tell me without Wemby for 85% of the game and the Spurs took the Timberwolves wire to wire there? I felt fine. And you saw it in game six, in game five, and in game six. And look, fact of the matter is this for it. It was exactly what we talked about, especially later in the series. How could Rudy Gobert do defending Wemby? And maybe you didn't see it early in the series, but those last few games of the series, Austin, it was rough for Rudy out there defending Wemby. It was so rough. And they didn't have the defensive strategy to get him figured out. Wemby was doing, full 360s when Wemby was faking passes. He didn't know where to go. And look, as
Yeah.
far as it goes for the Spurs, this again, like I said, maybe the whole thing about, well, they're young, and I'm like, yeah, they're young, but have you seen the talent on the roster? They're really good for a really young team, and they just have the right mindset. With it being the Spurs organization, from the jump in that Spurs organization, and it's something I appreciate about the Spurs. No matter how much they were winning titles, and you want others to win, just like we know we're going to be saying about Wemby and them for years to come. At least it feels like is they're such a team first organization about we're going to get this done together, and you've seen that on the court with them. And my hat tip of the hat to them because a ton of guys stepped up. Shout out De'Aaron Fox in the series. Um, I'm happy for him mainly because he's finally getting to play meaningful basketball in his career.
Yeah. No kidding.
I think that's just like my main thing about this. I'm like, finally, we get to see De'Aaron Fox play meaningful basketball for the first time in his NBA career. For the Timberwolves, look, let's just say it like it is. Talented team. Like I said, there's not much. Number one, there is not much they can change with how the roster's set. Number two, though, here's the thing. If they are to run it back next year with this roster, of course, Dante DiVincenzo is the big question mark coming off the Achilles, and he's got to get paid this summer from somebody. Here's the thing. If they run it back with this roster, are they beating the Thunder? No. If they run it back with this roster, are they beating the Spurs? No. But they are good enough to compete. They're just not good enough to beat them. And so you're just sitting there as Minnesota. It's like, man, what can we do? And look, fact of the matter is this. I don't like coming out and just saying players just sucked. Julius Randle, my gosh, buddy, it
He
was
had a
a
bad
rough
postseason.
it was a rough postseason, especially in this series. It was rough for him. So kind of somewhere I don't know what Minnesota can do because it's like they're stuck. They're a great team, but there are two other teams in this conference that are just a bit better than them when it comes to depth and overall talent around the roster. Besides that, they're a great team. So I don't know what they can do this offseason to maybe get over that hump of the Spurs and the Thunder.
Yeah, I just don't think there's an answer to it. I think, again, I've said this a lot this season. I think Anthony Edwards is that much of a difference maker that at his best, he can put his team over the top, even when maybe they're outmatched. I mean, he did that against Denver. Um, he's a talented enough player. They're kind of stuck, like you said. I don't think there's anything they can really do without having to make major changes to this roster. I think I'd rather roll the dice with Anthony Edwards in the playoffs
Mm-hmm.
than roll the dice with a new roster. Um,
And something I want to add again, just want to factor this in when I say this. I am not saying Anthony Edwards is like MJ. I am not saying that on
yes,
here. But you factor in the obvious thing for MJ to start his career with the Bulls coming in to the playoffs every single year thinking this was it, and they always just ran into the better team until they eventually just got to the point where they were able to finally get over that hump. And once they got over that hump, the world was their oyster. Now, that being said, uh, it was one team, and that was the Detroit Pistons that were in their way. Problem for Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards, who is as gifted as any player and as competitive as any player. And I know no matter what, every year with these three teams in the West for the next couple of years, oh, it's going to be dogfights. It's going to be dogfights with these three in the playoffs. But there's just nothing there that just says, I mean, maybe you could trade Julius Randle, but for what? More depth? Maybe at most. Like I don't know what you do.
I agree. It's a weird spot to be in. Um, but let's talk our final series wrapped up last night in a 7-game series, but the Cleveland Cavaliers advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals, besting the Pistons in games 5 and 7 in Detroit. We had both talked about it through the first four, actually, really for the first 3 games when Cleveland came out and was dominating back at home after getting kind of beat down in the first 2 games in Detroit. And we both said it. I messaged you and I was like, that figures that Cleveland would come out and play this good back in Cleveland, just like they did in the Toronto series.
Yeah.
And we both kind of had the same thought. When they do it on the road, we'll have a legitimate talk about what Cleveland can do in the postseason. But until then, who cares? You can't win on the road. Who cares? Especially being a lower seeded team. You've got to at least get one. You've got to at least get one. And finally, they do it in game 5. But then they lost game 6, and I thought, well, that figures. They only need to win 1 game on the road, and they lose the next home game. But they come out last night, and it's wire-to-wire domination. Jarrett Allen was impressive in this series like he was in the last series. Mobley had his moments. Donovan Mitchell really elevated himself to that different status. And I'm going to go ahead and pump the brakes on the James Harden talk. And no, I don't mean the James Harden slander because he played an awful game last night and he plays awful game 7s every game 7 of his entire career. I mean, pump the brakes on the James Harden is the savior of this team conversation. I saw people tweeting saying, Donovan Mitchell's never made it past the second round until now. And who did they add at the trade deadline? The guy who shot horribly in game 7 of this series. What are you talking about? Let's look at the box score, and you have a conversation with me about James Harden being a difference maker in this game. 9 points, 2 for 10 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3, 5 for 8 from the free throw. He missed 3 free throws. What are we talking about? He's no steals, no blocks, 1 turnover. He did have 6 assists, but so did Evan Mobley. Donovan Mitchell with 26 and 6 had more assists. I'm not saying James Harden's a bad player. I personally like James Harden. I think he is I think he's kind of, we've forgotten how good James Harden was at a point in his career. In the mid to late 2010s. This guy was awesome.
Yeah.
It was always the Warriors getting in the way. Like, he was awesome. That James Harden was awesome. This James Harden is not awesome. He's inefficient. He's selfish. It's just tough to watch. He plays no defense. So, yeah, this team gets over the hump. But I wouldn't say it's as much James Harden as it is they played the Raptors in the first round. Good, young team. Will be better in a couple of years. Same thing with the Pistons. Pistons come out and they shoot up to this 1 seed kind of out of nowhere. And they're a good team, but they'll be even better next year. Cade Cunningham had a collapse a month ago. This team really wasn't built for a finals run. It was, I mean, you got Tobias Harris out here, and Tobias Harris played good this postseason, but Duncan Robinson, not great. Karis LeVert actually had a pretty good game, game 7, but hasn't been the best. It wasn't, they didn't expect to be doing all this, and then they kind of did. So, and I'm not going to dog Cleveland. Awesome job for them. But Darius Garland could have done what James Harden done, and it'd been 1,000 times more efficient. This team didn't get over the hump because of James Harden. This team got over the hump because of Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and Donovan Mitchell, the guys who have been stepping up game in and game out this postseason. not James Harden's 2 for 10, 0 for 6 from the 3-point line. If James Harden's 0 for 6 from the 3-point line, literally the one thing you can count on James Harden to do is make a 3-pointer, and he can't do it in this game. What is James Harden doing? Um, so I didn't want this to turn into a James Harden slander fest, but we cannot come out here and say James Harden got the Thunder or got the Cavs over the hump because he didn't get the Cavs over the hump. Donovan Mitchell did. This should be a story of Donovan Mitchell taking that last step into superstardom. He's been the face of the franchise. He's been one of the best players in the NBA. But this was the moment he rose to the occasion. He became the superstar, and he put the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that should be the story for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I'll dive into the Pistons in a sec. Yeah, I want to give credit to the Cavs because, yeah, like I said, we were texting each other during the game three whenever, they were playing great. And I'm like, okay, can we see this on the road, please? Can we see this on the road? And, to their credit, they played a really strong game on the road. And I've noticed something more in this series with the Cavs, especially I have something I've noticed more. If Mobley and Allen get going early in these games, this is a tough team to beat. If Mobley and Allen get going early in these games and Mitchell and Harden can find them in the right positions when they're attacking, it opens up so much for this offense. Got to talk about game five. You got to talk about Max Strus. 6 threes off the bench for him. Incredible shooting night for him. Like I said, Harden had that great game five there, and they won that. And I was like, they got to get this done at home. They got to get this done at home. And then they come out in game six, and they just lay an egg, Austin. And my thought was exactly as yours. I said, this would of course happen to James Harden, and it would happen to the Cavs. That they would finally win a road game, and then they would come right home with a chance to end it, and they would just flat out fall apart. And I'll go ahead and say it. In game six, because I thought maybe, game seven, I'm not going to lie, entering game seven, I expected the Pistons to win pretty comfortably. I won't lie.
Me too.
So I was fully expecting to come on here this week and slander Donovan Mitchell for that game six performance. Because game six, he sucked. It was not a pretty performance. 6 of 20 from the field, whole bunch of turnovers for him and Harden and everyone. I was fully expecting to come on here and say that once the Pistons won game seven at home. Well, about that, the Cavs, look, Mitchell had one of the best bounce back games I've seen in a bit of time. Was really efficient everywhere, near triple double. 26, 6, and 8, like you said. But again, it's the guys that I said that they get going early, at least their success. Jared Allen, how about his past two game sevens? 23 and 7 in this one. And then against Toronto, 22 and 19. We make the joke about the lights got too bright for him. I don't think that's a question anymore for Jared Allen and for the Cavs. And then Evan Mobley with 21, 12, and 6. It's clear, like you said, James Harden and Donovan Mitchell are, the main guys on the roster that, control the offense, facilitators, run the offense. But the ones that let this offense have its success is when Jared Allen and Evan Mobley can get involved and be a part of the offense. That's the true success point, I think, for the Cavs. And if they can't get that going early, it leads to them playing games like they did in game six or games like they did in Toronto. So credit to the Cavs for getting over that hump. They got a tough matchup in the conference finals, but we'll dive into that in a second. But credit to them, and obviously, we'll talk about the Pistons now. But just great performance on the road in Game 7.
Yeah, and to your credit, like you said about Donovan Mitchell's game six, I saw people posting and talking about is a video about like all-stars and who might be traded this offseason, whether they thought it was likely or unlikely. Jaylen Brown was a guy that came up.
Mm-hmm.
Joel Embiid, Paulo Banchero, Giannis, guys we've been hearing.
Right.
Maybe
Yep.
stuff might happen with certain individuals this offseason. They said Donovan Mitchell, and the guy said, it depends on how game seven goes, but I would lean towards trading Donovan Mitchell. Why? Why? And look, I know game six wasn't good. And we could have come on here and said, yeah, he played bad, but I would not have come on here and said trade Donovan Mitchell
Right.
and play behind James Harden and some
Yeah.
other older veteran wing player. They've got it going good right now. We'll see what happens with Cleveland. I still stand by finals or bust. Win the finals or bust. I still think that James Harden hasn't brought anything that I don't think Darius Garland could have done, minus being healthy for the last 15 games of the regular season. Um, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about Detroit. Like I said, as good of a team they were and as good as they played in the postseason, this team wasn't supposed to be this good, really.
Yeah.
They played really well. JB Bickerstaff, credit to him. He's one of the best coaches out there. And he's really got this team going and these guys going. But it's not time to pat yourselves on the back and say, good job. Hey, you had a great season. But I think right now they need to be thinking about what's next. You've got Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren
Mhm.
looking really, really good. Asar Thompson. They've got a good core. But what else does this team need? What does this team need to do this offseason to get back to this place and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals next year?
I'll just be about as frank as I can be. Offense. They need more offense. Defense was incredible, as it always is whenever Detroit's a really good basketball team. The
Yeah.
defense was great. Cade Cunningham, it felt like all the pressure was on him offensively. It felt like if he didn't do something, the team was in trouble. And you saw that with game seven. Whenever he wasn't able to get it going, everything just fell apart for him. Asar Thompson, awesome defender, one of the best defenders in the NBA. If you heard Kenny Atkinson in the post-game press conference, he said, "We literally just stayed away from Asar Thompson. That was our offensive strategy. Just stay away from him."
Yeah.
Now imagine if he can get that jump shot going more. Imagine it. We'd be looking at Kawhi Leonard 2.0 here. We'd be looking at it. And so look, the fact of the matter is, number one, they got to get another reliable scoring option, whether that's Asar stepping up more or Dennis Jenkins stepping up more, things of that nature. But the offense has just got to improve, whether that's get another great scorer that you can provide in the offseason or getting Asar Thompson more confident in that jumper to make people respect him on the offensive end to go along with the defensive end. And also, don't forget, Jalen Duren's got to get paid this offseason. And I am not going to lie, that is going to be an interesting conversation this offseason about that.
Yeah.
Because if you look at his regular season, he was incredible. He was a great player for them, consistent double double machine, 20 and 10 almost on a nightly basis. And then you had the playoffs where it was not pretty for most of it. I'm not going to lie. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley whooped his butt in game 7. Fact of the matter. So, you know, but also, I mean, let's just take a look at this. You got Cade Cunningham, 24. Jalen Duren's only 22. Asar Thompson's 23. Jenkins is 24. The only outlier is Tobias Harris at 33, which Tobias Harris over me? Are you kidding me with the way that game 7 went? Um, so they have the pieces. They have some good pieces. They just got to get more on the offensive end. And if they can get more on the offensive end from someone not named Cade Cunningham and keep up the defensive effort, the sky's the limit for them. Totally random. Shout out Paul Reed in this series. Heck of a series for Paul Reed. We don't get B-ball Paul had some great moments.
B-ball Paul, yeah, there's no kidding there.
But I mean, but just got to get more offense. They get more offense, the world's their oyster.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Pistons offense was missing a certain gambling addicted three-point sharpshooter that they had maybe not too long ago.
Yeah.
That really kind of hurt when they were not allowed to re-sign that player when he entered free agency. Um, but yeah, I would agree with you. You see, again, guys like Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert, Kevin Herter, who they traded for, were guys to kind of fit that sharpshooter role that they were kind of missing. with the loss of Malik Beasley. Um, and Kevin Herter forgot how to shoot a three-pointer coming from Chicago to Detroit. Not that far of a drive. I don't know what he lost on the way there. Um, but yeah, so they didn't have the kind of impact that they wanted. And if they can either get those guys to kind of wake up and start shooting the ball again or find somebody to replace them, I'm with you. I think they're back on track.
Again, Asar Thompson is the ultimate wild card here because if he can figure things out on the offensive end and get you, I mean, shoot, let's think about it. Was what he averaged like maybe 10 points a game, I think, this season, something like that. If you can get him to get that up to 15 points per game or close to 20, that adds so much else to it. I mean, it's like I said, they switched their whole game plan to say just stay away from Asar Thompson. If
Yeah.
Asar Thompson's on you, do not try to score. That was the Cavs game plan. So he's the wild card that really could make them an even more dangerous team than they were this year. And they freaking won 60 games this year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. But let's talk about these conference final series now,
Ooh.
and what we've got cooking. And let's start in the East, where we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the New York Knicks. Game one is tomorrow, in New York. But before we make our predictions about the series, for both sides, for New York, for Cleveland, what do these teams need to do to win this series?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the Cavs. Again, what I said, they've got to get Evan Mobley and Jared Allen going early. Because when those two can get going early on the offensive end, it creates so many more opportunities for Max Strus, for Mitchell, for Harden, you name it. Getting those two going early is going to be the key for the Cavs because the offensive output with those two going, it's hard to compete against. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to compete against. And they're already a tough defensive unit when you think of the length that they provide in the middle there that helps. Um, but fact of the matter is this, if those two get going, that can really help them. For the Knicks, look, pure and simple, keep up the defensive energy from this playoffs. The defensive energy is going to be there for you guys. And as long as you have the consistent scoring, that's the difference, I think, from Cavs, Pistons to now Cavs and Knicks. The Knicks can play the good defense that they played in the playoffs, but they have so many great scorers on that roster compared to, other guys. Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Cat, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart at points we've seen. Just so many more scoring options for the team makes it even more dangerous. But defense for the Knicks and then getting Mobley and Allen going earlier for the Cavs, those are my two keys.
Yeah, and when I look at Cleveland, I think the big thing for Cleveland to me is limiting perimeter opportunities for the New York Knicks. And that's going to be kind of tough. I don't know how it'll look this series, but, they like to play a smaller lineup a lot of times, and maybe Mitchell Robinson gets boosted up maybe into the starting lineup to match Mobley and Allen. I don't know. But I think that it's going to be all about limiting those perimeter opportunities. Mobley, Jared Allen, they're not guys that are going to get pulled out to the perimeter and have a lot of success. But if you can deny and kind of frustrate them on the perimeter early and force them to start to come inside, that can be where it's dangerous because Cleveland's whole identity is that the way they play their defense, they limit those inside opportunities. They don't want you in the paint. They want to keep you outside of the paint. While I understand that is your mentality, I think you have to tweak it a little bit to want teams to attack so that you can block their shots when they get to the
you know.
because I promise the New York Knicks shooting a bunch of three-pointers is not what you want in this game. You need this team to feel like they have to come inside and they have to, adventure amongst the trees of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. You do not want this team to feel comfortable shooting three-pointers because then that means Mobley's going to have to come out or Jared Allen's going to have to come out to the perimeter. And I just don't think that's advantageous for Cleveland. And for me, for New York, it's kind of like the inverse of your key for Cleveland. it's got to be denying those bigs the ball. You're going
Mhm.
to be in a size disadvantage. What kind of defensive looks do they throw at Cleveland to kind of disrupt the flow? I mean, we talked about it game seven, Mobley and Jared Allen getting over 20 points in that game. Like you said, when these two guys get it going and get it going early, they're effective. What does this team do to counter that? Does Mitchell Robinson start alongside Karl Anthony Towns? Do they throw some kind of zone look at them with the smaller lineup? Um, I'm very interested to see, like you said, their defense has definitely stepped up in the postseason. They need their defense to be going, but I'm specifically interested in how they kind of try to nullify that size
Mhm.
disadvantage down low, especially if they do decide to go with that smaller starting lineup that they often lean on. Um, but with that being said, what are your thoughts on the series? How many games? Who's winning? And who's our Larry Bird
Yeah.
Eastern Conference Finals MVP?
So, kind of similar to what my point was, I think it's a fairly competitive series. I think so. Again, the fact of the matter that hurts the Cavs here is in that Raptors and Pistons series. You played two good defensive teams. Fact of the matter is they had one or two key scores, and then it was just a whole bunch of question marks everywhere else. With this Knicks lineup, you're going to have to worry about Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. I mean, and obviously at points Josh Hart. I mean, to go along with it, I just
Carl
think
Anthony
there's
Towns.
Carl Anthony Towns. Thank you. I was trying. I was like, who am I missing here? I couldn't think of the name. But they have so many more scoring options here that I think it's just going to be a little too much for the Cavs to overcome. Plus, again, I think the way the Knicks have played their defense in the playoffs to go along with that offensive output, I just think Knicks are the better team. Part of me wants to be bold and say Knicks in five, but I'm going to play it safe and I'm going to say Knicks in six. Again, that's my reason. Just think they're the better overall team and they have the better scoring options, best scoring options, and toughest matchup for that Cavs defense they've seen in the playoffs by far.
Yeah, I think my thing comes down to it goes with the scoring options, but for New York, just being forced to play a perimeter offense based on the way Cleveland likes to play their defense, I think is an advantage to them more than anything. And if Cleveland can't, which I don't think they're going to be able to limit those perimeter opportunities, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden are both not very good defenders. Donovan Mitchell's kind of undersized for being like an off-ball guard on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe he'll match up with Brunson size-wise. That would definitely be more of an advantageous matchup for them. So at least Donovan Mitchell wouldn't be getting, defending somebody a couple inches
Right,
bigger than
right.
him. But still, I just think it's going to be hard for them to limit Jalen Brunson, especially. And then if I was the Knicks, I'd lean heavily on Karl Anthony Towns' perimeter offense. He's already kind of, I'm not saying he is, but he is known around the league to be kind of weak inside. I think that's more slander than anything.
Hmm.
But his effectiveness down low is not as good. He's got a good mid range. He's got a good three ball. He offers a lot as a perimeter threat. I think trying to utilize that and drawing out whoever's on him, Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, or even if that means that they're going to switch into some kind of like 2-3 zone to be able to just keep those guys down low. I think all of that is more advantageous for New York. So they should definitely lean on Cat's outside presence. I think they've got too many perimeter threats for a team that forces you to the perimeter. It just kind of clashes for Cleveland. I don't think they're going to be able to limit the opportunities. I like New York in five, and I like Jalen Brunson as my Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP.
Oh, I forgot. I just realized I didn't say mine. I completely forgot. You know what? You know what? Screw it. Give me OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby's your
I like it.
Larry Bird player. Why not? Comes back from injury, best player in the series. Why not? Let's get to the one, Austin, that
Yes,
everyone is thinking this might as well be the NBA Finals.
yes. Kick this game off at 7 o'clock. I'm excited. We're gonna try and get out of this. Hopefully, this last segment doesn't take 3 hours, but you never know. We could be here talking for a while.
Yeah.
Um, But we've got the number one seed Oklahoma City Thunder versus the number two seed San Antonio Spurs. Teams that have gone back and forth in this regular season. And now they get to settle it and hopefully 7 games in the Western Conference Finals. Anything less would be a robbery by the NBA. The first 6 games should be scripted so that we can play an awesome unscripted game 7. If you want my opinion personally. But we've got a lot going on in this series and a lot of factors between these two teams. You say, looks like the NBA Finals. I'd agree with you probably that these are the two best teams, but I am not going to sleep on the New York Knicks.
Right, that's
I would
fair.
like to see the Knicks in the finals against whoever wins this series because I think the Knicks can give either of these teams a good fight. Not necessarily that they'll win. But like we did with the last series, your keys for each team's victory in this hotly contested matchup.
Well, before I say that, I just want to say real quickly, Joe, and tell you how historic this is. This is the first NBA playoff series between teams with 60 or more wins since 2017. And it's the first between teams with 62 or more wins since the 1998 NBA Finals between the Jazz and the Bulls. This is a historic series you're about to witness. These are two teams that are the future of the sport. Let's just say it like it is. This series is ultimately, maybe round one of like 5 straight years where they're meeting in the conference finals. I mean, let's just be frank.
Yeah.
My key for this series for both of them is pure and simple. Which big men can create separation more in this series? I mean, pure and simple. For the Spurs, look, let's say it like it is. The Thunder are a great defensive unit when they can collapse the paint and Chet's in there to help create things. Now, if Wemby's out here and can create more perimeter opportunities and takes Chet out of the paint, that leads to a lot more single coverage for Stephon Castle, Derek Harper, De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell. Don't forget about him either. So I think, and then, on the other side for the Thunder, get Wemby out of the paint. Make him have to respect Chet to get the one-on-ones for Shea or for now a fully healthy Jalen Williams. So that's my overall key, I would say, is just which big men can get the separation on the perimeter to lead to the more single coverage opportunities for, all the great scoring guards we're going to have in this series. But man, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. I mine is kind of similar to yours, but mine also plays off of each other. I think the key for the Oklahoma City Thunder is to limit Victor Wembanyama. If you can find a way to slow him down and make him ineffective, and kind of make him struggle, we saw in this postseason, we saw in the last series, the games where Wemby struggled, the games where Wemby gets frustrated and gets a flagrant 2 and gets ejected. Those were the games that the Timberwolves were able to get on the Spurs. Same as the concussion game for Wemby. Isn't that the game that they lost to Portland, or was it?
Yep.
Yeah. So games where, and I'm not saying give him a concussion or anything like that, but I'm saying when you limit Wemby and you make him ineffective, the Spurs struggle, and that's where your opportunity is to strike. And especially as a team as good as the Thunder, you get that opportunity and you can take it and run with it, and you will not have to look back. For San Antonio, you've had other pieces that are effective. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to say that, Wemby's been the only guy to do it. But for me, for San Antonio, you need as much as you can get out of Dylan Harper, as much as you can get out of De'Aaron Fox, as much as you can get out of Stephon Castle, Keldon Johnson. Everybody that touches this floor, they've got to find a way to contribute outside of Wemby. Because if Wemby starts to get slowed down, obviously you're going to need somebody else to carry the load. But I think more importantly, to keep this team from throwing 2 guys at Wemby, which might be the cure, or whatever kind of defensive adjustments they might need to make to limit him. If you get Stephon Castle or De'Aaron Fox, Keldon Johnson, who's had some good games, you get some of those guys going in this rotation, Devin Vassell. Well, now we've got to think about what that guy's doing. Maybe Chet now has to hedge that way and leave Wemby. You can start to create opportunities for Wembanyama that way as well. So I think the keys are simple. For the Thunder, stop Wemby. For the Spurs, somebody else has got to step up in this series. We know how great Wemby is.
Hmm.
Who else can get the job done?
I think so. And hey, I'll go ahead and tell you this thing. You kind of hinted at it for the Thunder. I mean, I'll go ahead and say, and y'all can judge all you want. Maybe this is a Jordan rule situation with Wemby. For those who do not know, the Jordan rules for when the Pistons played them, the Pistons said, make him run through every screen, hit him on every screen. Every time he wants to drive, send his butt to the floor. Make him not want to play and attack the basket. That's the thing with Wemby. You're not trying to injure him like, certain players on the Thunder are, and I pray he doesn't do that in the series. But fact of the matter is make Wemby have to fight through screens. Every time he wants to try and drive an attack against Chet or Hartenstein, make him pay for it. That's how you want to beat Wemby. That's how I think it's going to have to be done for the Thunder if they want to get it done.
I agree with you. Sadly, I think we're both overthinking it. NBA defense is no longer that confident.
I
And
just
maybe,
wish. I wish it
I
was
know
like that.
we're just going to see straight man for 7 games,
Yeah.
and whoever can play better against man coverage and ISO ball
Yeah.
probably going to win the game. But I agree with you. I think this is a perfect opportunity to bring that kind of physicality and that kind of edge, and make San Antonio earn it, make Wemby earn it, and at the very least, you're going to wear him down fast in this series. But let's make our predictions. Games, winner, Magic Johnson, Western Conference Finals MVP. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to actually try to get everything in it on the first try this time. Look, fact of the matter is this. I heard all the people talking about, man, Spurs won 4 out of 5 against the Thunder in the regular season and this and that. And I hear the argument there. Number one, though, let's say it like it is. NBA playoffs, and it's one of the things that makes me kind of frustrated with the NBA, and you'll agree. Playoff basketball compared to regular season basketball, not even close to the same. And that's something I'm sure you can agree with. But here's the other thing I think people need to realize. For each of the wins that the Spurs had, over the 3 wins that the Spurs had over a 13-day stretch in December against the Thunder, Wemby came off the bench in each of those 3 wins. He was not the main guy because he was still coming off that calf injury, I think is what he had. So he wasn't even 100%. They were going out and taking care of business in the series. And look, fact of the matter is this. I just think pure and simple, the better overall team is the San Antonio Spurs. I think the Thunder are a great team. They show great defensively. They have some great scores and guys step up. Fact of the matter is this, when I look at what's the best overall team in the series with the best player in the entire series, to me it's the San Antonio Spurs. I am picking the Spurs. Look, I think if it goes to 7 in OKC, I have my doubts. So I'm going to say Spurs in 6. But it's a competitive 6 games, if you can understand
Yeah.
what I mean there. And I mean, of course, I've got to say Wemby. I could try to be different here. It's like I said during our playoff predictions. I could try to be different and pick somebody else. But end of the day, we all know who it is for that. So yeah, I got Spurs in 6 games. Wemby, Magic Johnson, Western Conference Finals MVP.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you here and say San Antonio. I think these are two awesome powerhouse teams, and I don't want to discredit the Thunder. I don't want to sound like the guy that's just taking the Spurs to not pick the Thunder to repeat because
Right.
they're the reigning champs or whatever. Because I really do like this Thunder team, but I'm starting to get the feelings that I got about the Thunder last year because last week I said, or our last episode, I said the Spurs are too young. They're going to get caught by being too young. And they did it. And I believe last year in the playoffs, I said the same thing about the Thunder. I said, wow, we've seen them really blossom and be great. I think they're just a little bit too young. They're going to get met by somebody and get taken down. And that didn't happen. I'm starting to see that with the Spurs. I'm starting to realize that there might not be this capped by experience or capped by age. This team might just be ready to go. And they really proved that to me in the last series. So I'm going to say shades of Thunder last year. They win this series. I think it's going to go 7 games. I think these teams are going to push each other to the brink. I think that's where the Spurs have this great victory in OKC to get the job done. And I'm with you. Just did a little bit of research. There's never been a conference finals MVP that didn't also become the finals MVP for his team.
Okay.
Um, so I was going to make a different pick to be like, oh, De'Aaron Fox, because it's happened before, but it hasn't since the conference finals MVPs. We just haven't seen a crazy enough series yet in the conference finals where a player who wasn't good enough to win finals MVP didn't snuck in and won the conference finals MVP. So far, it's usually been the best guy or the best guy during the playoff run in Jaylen Brown's case. So I'm going to go with Wemby as well. As fun as it would be to see somebody else, if the Spurs win, they'll do it on the back of Victor
Yeah.
Wembanyama, and
But
he will be the guy that gets the nod from the voters.
But man, I mean, this gonna be, and I 100% agree with you. There's no way this doesn't go 6 games or 7 games. Like if this ends in 5 games, we might need to wrap up the NBA title right there. If one of these teams beats the other in 5 games or less, I mean, like, come on. There's no way. There's no way that happens. There's no way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Um, Look, I'm excited. Uh, we've got a great game in store. Game one is tonight. It's actually at 7:30 on NBC. I know we're not sponsored by the NBA or NBC, but everybody needs to get out there and watch this game. We are about to watch a generational, league-changing NBA Finals series, or NBA Western Conference Finals
Yeah,
series.
but yeah.
This is going to be awesome. This is, like you said earlier in the episode, this is the future of basketball. This is the changing of the guard right here. We're going to see this matchup a lot over the next probably 10 years in the NBA, more if we're lucky. So it's time to strap in and get ready for a historic clash. But with all that being said, that's going to do it for us here at the Bold Take Podcast. That's Austin Wader. I'm Austin Hill, and we want to thank you for listening.